The greenhouse shimmered, all glass and humid air, ferns hanging like verdant chandeliers. I smoothed down my dress, a simple floral print I'd picked out specifically for Lunelle's baby shower. I'd even baked her favorite lemon bars, arranging them carefully on a tiered stand. Then came the toast. Lunelle, radiant in a flowing white dress, raised her glass. "I want to thank everyone for coming," she announced, her smile wide, "especially Ola, our wonderful free servant, who's been so helpful these past few months." A ripple of laughter went through the room. My smile froze. I felt my cheeks flush hot, then cold. "Free servant," I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. Lunelle simply patted my arm, a condescending gesture that stung more than her words. "Oh, Ola, you're so funny. We all know how much you love helping out." The afternoon blurred after that. Guests cooed over Lunelle, showering her with gifts and attention. I busied myself refilling punch bowls and clearing plates, trying to ignore the whispers and sideways glances. Romy, my dearest friend, found me by the fern stand, her expression a mixture of concern and fury. "Ola, are you all right? That was appalling." "I'm fine," I lied, forcing a weak smile. "Just a bit overwhelmed, I suppose." Romy wasn't fooled. "Don't let her get to you," she said, squeezing my hand. "Lunelle's always been dramatic." "It's not just the drama," I confessed, my voice trembling. "It's the way she said it, like I'm some kind of hired help." Romy nodded sympathetically. "I know, honey, I know." Later, as I was packing up the leftover lemon bars untouched, of course Braden, my son, approached me. "Mom," he began, his tone hesitant. "Lunelle didn't mean anything by it. She's just hormonal." I looked at him, my heart aching. "Braden, she called me a servant in front of all our friends and family. How can you defend that?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "She's pregnant, Mom. She doesn't always think before she speaks. And you just let her walk all over me?" I asked, my voice rising. "You just stand there and let her humiliate me?" Braden shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I'll talk to her. Okay, it won't happen again." I knew it was an empty promise. I knew deep down that this wasn't just a pregnancy-induced slip of the tongue. This was Lunelle asserting her dominance, marking her territory, and I was the easy target. Driving home that evening, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, I replayed the afternoon in my mind, the laughter, the whispers, the condescending pat on my arm. It all felt like a carefully orchestrated performance, designed to put me in my place. And what was my place? The unpaid help, the invisible caregiver, the one who could be dismissed with a wave of the hand and a condescending chuckle. The more I thought about it, the more a quiet anger began to simmer within me. It wasn't a fiery rage, but a slow, steady burn. I pulled over to the side of the road, the engine ticking softly beneath the hood. I stared out at the passing cars, the streetlights blurring in the twilight. I had spent my life building a comfortable, secure future for myself and my son. I had worked tirelessly, sacrificing my own desires and dreams to ensure Braden had everything he needed. And this was how I was repaid. I thought about the house, the beautiful Victorian I had poured my heart and soul into restoring. It was supposed to be my sanctuary, my haven. Now it felt tainted, invaded. I remembered a conversation I'd overheard between Braden and Lunel a few weeks earlier. Something about transferring ownership, about simplifying things. At the time, I hadn't paid much attention. Now, a chilling thought crept into my mind. Could they have? I shook my head, dismissing it as paranoia. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and as I started the car and continued my drive home, a new resolve began to solidify within me. I wouldn't let them get away with this. I wouldn't let them erase me. I would find out the truth, and I would reclaim what was rightfully mine. The last guests were leaving, their laughter echoing faintly from the patio. Lunel, still glowing from the attention, hadn't even noticed me slipping out of the greenhouse. I hadn't said a word since her little speech, and of course, a huge thanks to my wonderful, livin' matey mean, mother-in-law, Ola, for all her help today, she'd chirped, her smile as fake as the orchids decorating the tables. I could feel my cheeks burning even now, hours later, as I quietly packed up the leftover sandwiches and cake. The greenhouse, usually my sanctuary, felt stifling, each potted fern a silent witness to my humiliation. I folded the tablecloth, the crisp linen cool against my trembling hands. Need a hand with those? Ola, Julian asked, his voice gentle. He was a kind man, Julian, always caught in the crossfire. I shook my head, managing a weak smile. No, thank you, Julian. I've got it. He lingered for a moment, a concerned frown creasing his brow. Are you all right? He asked, his eyes searching mine. Just tired, I murmured, averting my gaze. I couldn't bear to see the pity in his eyes. He nodded slowly, then turned and walked towards the house, his footsteps echoing on the stone path. I continued packing, my movements mechanical. The floral scent of the greenhouse, usually so comforting, felt cloying, almost suffocating. Every cheerful decoration, every balloon bobbing against the glass ceiling, seemed to mock me. I remembered how excited I had been to throw this shower for Lunel, how much time and effort I'd put into making it special. I'd baked her favorite lemon cake, arranged the flowers myself, even hand-painted the tiny ceramic favors. And for what? To be publicly dismissed as the help, a free servant living under her roof. The thought stung fresh and sharp, like a slap across the face. I closed my eyes for a moment, willing myself to stay calm. I needed to leave, to escape the suffocating sweetness of this place. As I lifted the last box, a small framed photograph slipped from beneath the tablecloth and clattered to the floor. It was a picture of Braden and me, taken years ago, during our annual trip to the sunflower fields. We were both laughing, our faces bright with sunshine. I picked up the frame, my fingers tracing the outline of Braden's younger face. Where had that boy gone? The one who used to bring me wildflowers and tell me I was the best mom in the world. Now, he barely looked me in the eye, his words clipped and distant. He'd become a shadow of his former self, molded by Lunel's constant demands and criticisms. Mom, Braden's voice startled me. He stood at the entrance to the greenhouse, his expression unreadable. Lunel's looking for you, he said, his voice flat. She wants to know if you've seen her diamond bracelet. The diamond bracelet. A vulgar, ostentatious piece of jewelry that Braden had gifted her for their anniversary, using the money I'd given him for the down payment on a new car. I swallowed, the bitter taste rising in my throat. I haven't seen it, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded curtly, his eyes scanning the greenhouse as if I were a thief. Well, let us know if you find it, he said, and then he was gone, leaving me alone with the echoes of Lunel's laughter and the suffocating scent of orchids. I straightened up, my back aching, and carried the boxes out to the car. The evening air was cool against my skin, a welcome relief from the stifling atmosphere of the greenhouse. As I drove home, the streetlights blurring past, I replayed Lunel's words in my mind, each syllable a fresh wound. My wonderful, living maid. The words echoed, bouncing around in the hollow space inside me. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. A quiet resolve began to settle within me, a cold, hard knot in the pit of my stomach. I was tired of being treated like a servant, of being invisible. I was tired of watching Braden slowly disappear under Lunel's control. Something had to change. I pulled into the driveway of the small cottage I now called home. It wasn't much, but it was mine, or at least it had been, before Braden had convinced me to transfer the deed to his name, promising to take care of me in my old age. He'd said it was for tax purposes, a way to protect my assets. Now I realized it had all been a lie, a carefully orchestrated plan by Lunel to gain control of everything I owned. The house, the one I'd raised Braden in, the one filled with memories of birthdays and holidays and quiet evenings spent reading together by the fireplace, was no longer mine. It belonged to Lunel, to the woman who treated me like a servant, who dismissed me with a wave of her hand and a condescending smile. As I stepped out of the car, I noticed a light on in my lawyer's office across the street, a small flickering beacon in the darkness. I hesitated for a moment, then crossed the street, a new sense of purpose hardening my resolve. I had been silent for too long. It was time for Lunel to learn that I wasn't invisible, that I wouldn't be silenced. It was time for her to understand the consequences of her actions. It was time for payback. I knocked on the door, the sound sharp and decisive in the quiet night. The door opened a crack, and my lawyer, Mrs. Peterson, peered out, her face etched with surprise. "Ola," she said, her voice hushed. "What are you doing here so late?" "I need your help," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I need to get my house back." Rain lashed against my windshield, blurring the streetlights into hazy halos. I sat in my car, engine off, the chill seeping in, mirroring the coldness that had settled in my heart. How could Braden do this to me, my own son? I thought back to all those years, working double shifts, scrimping and saving, just to give him a good life. Remember the tiny apartment, Braden, the one with the leaky faucet and the broken heater. We huddled together for warmth, sharing a single blanket, and I promised you things would get better. I promised you a home, a real home, with a garden and a swing set, and I kept that promise. I worked my fingers to the bone, took on extra clients, even skipped meals, just to make enough for a down payment. "Mom, this is amazing," you said, beaming, the day we finally moved in. You were just a little boy then, all gap-toothed grins and boundless energy. You helped me plant those rose bushes by the front porch. Remember, we spent hours tending them, watching them grow. Just like you. Now, those roses felt like thorns, twisting in my gut. I pulled out the crumpled document again, the legal jargon swimming before my tired eyes. The house, my house, the one I'd poured my heart and soul, my life savings into, was no longer mine. Braden and Lunell had somehow transferred the deed. Their names, stark and bold, mocked me from the page. But how? I whispered to the empty car, the words catching in my throat. It felt like a physical blow, a sucker punch to the stomach. I remembered Lunell's saccharine smile at the baby shower, her voice dripping with false affection as she introduced me to her friends. "This is Ola," she'd said, her hand resting possessively on Braden's arm. "Our wonderful helper. She practically runs our lives. Helper. Runs our lives." As if I were some hired hand, not the woman who'd raised her husband, the woman who'd given them everything. The rain intensified, mimicking the storm raging inside me. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, trying to control the trembling in my hands. The image of Lunell's triumphant smirk flashed before my eyes. She'd made sure to position me near the kitchen, near the trays of canapes and the stacks of napkins, as if to solidify my role in her narrative. "She's such a lifesaver," Lunell had continued, oblivious to the way my smile was cracking. "We couldn't manage without her, manage without me. They couldn't manage without the house I'd paid for, the meals I cooked, the laundry I folded, the endless errands I ran. I'd become an invisible fixture in their lives, a convenient appliance they took for granted." I leaned my head against the steering wheel, the cold plastic a small comfort against the burning in my cheeks. The shame, the humiliation, it washed over me in waves, threatening to drown me. I closed my eyes, willing myself to breathe. "Think, Ola, think." There had to be something I could do. I wasn't some helpless old woman. I had rights. I had dignity, and I would not be erased. A tiny spark of defiance flickered within me, a small ember in the vast darkness. I straightened up, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I had to fight back. I had to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I fumbled for my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. "Hello, Romy, it's Ola. I need your help." Romy, my oldest friend, my confidant, had always been my rock. She'd listened patiently to my worries about Braden and Lunell, my growing unease at their subtle manipulations. "Romy," I said, my voice trembling slightly, "something terrible has happened. I need to see you now." Romy didn't hesitate. "Come over, Ola. I'll put the kettle on." Her voice, warm and steady, was a lifeline in the storm. As I started the engine, a faint glimmer of hope pierced through the gloom. I had a plan forming, a seed of an idea taking root in the fertile ground of my anger. It wouldn't be easy, but I was determined. I would get my house back. I would reclaim my dignity. And Lunell would learn that there was a price to pay for taking advantage of a mother's love. The rain continued to fall, but it no longer felt like a burden. It felt like a cleansing, washing away the hurt and humiliation, leaving behind a steely resolve. I drove towards Romy's house, the city lights blurring past, the wipers rhythmically clearing my view. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't be defeated. Not this time. This was just the beginning. Rain lashed against the windows, mirroring the storm raging inside me. I sat at the kitchen table, the flimsy paper trembling in my hand. It was a copy of the house deed, my house deed, except the name listed as owner wasn't mine. It was Braden and Lunell's. How could they? I whispered, the words catching in my throat. My own son, the sweet boy I raised, had betrayed me. He'd conspired with his wife to steal my home, the place where he took his first steps, celebrated every birthday, the place I'd poured my life savings into. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. "Romy, you won't believe this," I choked out when she answered. "They took my house." Romy's voice, usually so bright and cheerful, turned sharp with concern. "What do you mean? Ola, what happened?" I explained everything, the lump in my throat making it hard to speak. How I'd overheard Lunell bragging to Julian on the phone about finally securing the property. How I'd pretended to go shopping, driven straight to the county recorder's office, and requested a copy of the deed. "She's been calling at our house for months, Romy, but I never thought never thought they'd actually do this." Romy was silent for a moment. Then her voice, low and steady, came through the line. "Ola, breathe. We'll figure this out." Her words were a small comfort, but the cold dread spreading through me was relentless. They forged my signature. "Romy," I said, my voice barely above a whisper as I examined the document again. The signature was a clumsy imitation, a mockery of my own careful script. It's right there, staring me in the face. My own son he stole from me. "Ola, listen to me," Romy said firmly. "This isn't right. You need to talk to a lawyer, immediately. Do you have anyone in mind?" I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. "No, I don't even know where to start." The thought of lawyers and legal battles felt overwhelming, a world I didn't understand. "Don't worry," Romy reassured me. "I know someone. She's sharp, and she's helped me with some tricky situations before. I'll call her right now and explain everything. Give me your address. I'll send her over first thing tomorrow morning." I gave Romy my address, a hollow ache in my chest. This house, the one I'd lovingly maintained for decades, suddenly felt foreign, hostile. "Thank you, Romy," I managed to say, my voice thick with unshed tears. "I don't know what I'd do without you." After we hung up, I wandered through the house, touching the familiar surfaces, the smooth wood of the banister, the cool tile of the kitchen counter. Each touch felt like a goodbye. How could I stay here, knowing what they'd done? How could I face my own son, knowing he'd betrayed me like this? I went into Braden's old room, untouched since he'd left for college. His childhood drawings were still pinned to the corkboard, his trophies lined up on the shelf. A wave of nausea washed over me. Had all of this been a lie? Had his love, his respect, been a performance, a means to an end? I sank onto his bed, clutching a faded teddy bear he'd cherished as a child. The rain continued to batter the windows, the wind howling like a mournful cry. I felt utterly alone, adrift in a sea of betrayal and despair. I closed my eyes, The image of the forged signature burned into my mind. But beneath the despair, a flicker of something else began to ignite a quiet resolve, a cold determination. They might have taken my house. They might have thought they'd broken me, but they were wrong. I wouldn't let them get away with this. I would fight. I would reclaim what was rightfully mine. And when I was done, they would understand the true meaning of loss. The rain finally stopped, the clouds parting to reveal a sliver of moon. I stood up, the teddy bear slipping from my grasp. It was time to start planning. Rain lashed against the windows, mirroring the storm raging inside me. Romy squeezed my hand. "Let's just look at it again, Ola." I nodded, the lump in my throat making it hard to swallow. I unfolded the crisp document, the house deed, its familiar legalese now a cruel mockery. Romy leaned in, her brow furrowed. "It said S like you said. The transfer date it's after you signed it over to Braden for the loan." My voice was barely a whisper. "He promised me. He swore he wouldn't do anything else with it without telling me." Romy sighed. "Men," she muttered, shaking her head. "And Lunelcia's behind this, isn't she?" I closed my eyes, Lunel's smug face flashing behind my eyelids. Her words echoed in my ears. "Thank you for your service, Ola. You've been such a wonderful help." Help? Free servant. She'd practically called me at the baby shower, in front of everyone. My own son, Braden, had just stood there, a weak smile plastered on his face. He hadn't corrected her. He hadn't defended me. He'd let her strip me of my dignity, piece by piece. "She's a viper," Romy said, her voice laced with venom, "slithering her way into your family, into your home, and now this." I opened my eyes, focusing on the stark black and white of the deed. "It's my house," I stated, my voice trembling. "I bought it. I worked for it. Every brick, every shingle." Romy nodded fiercely. "And you'll get it back." I ran my hand over the document, the smooth paper a stark contrast to the turmoil within. "They forged my signature," I whispered, the realization hitting me with renewed force. "They actually forged my signature." Romy patted my hand. "We'll find a lawyer, Ola. A good one. Someone who can take these snakes down." I stared out at the rain, the world outside blurring into a gray haze. I thought about the years I'd poured into that house, the laughter, the holidays, the memories, and now it was gone, stolen by my own son and his conniving wife. "Braden used to bring me flowers from the garden," I murmured, my voice thick with unshed tears. "He loved that rose bush by the kitchen window." Romy's face softened. "I remember. You used to make him rose-petal jam." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "He probably doesn't even remember that now. Too busy with her." I picked up the deed again, tracing the forged signature with my finger. They seemed to mock me, a symbol of their betrayal. "They think they've won," I said, a steely edge creeping into my voice. "They think they can just take what's mine and walk away." Romy's eyes narrowed. They thought wrong. I looked at Romy, a flicker of resolve sparking in my chest. "They don't know me. They don't know what I'm capable of." I folded the deed, tucking it away safely. The rain continued to fall, but inside, a different kind of storm was brewing. One of quiet determination, of righteous anger. They had underestimated me. They had mistaken my kindness for weakness. They had made a grave mistake. I need to call someone, I said, my voice regaining its strength. Romy raised an eyebrow. Who? I smiled, a small, almost imperceptible curve of my lips. A lawyer, I replied, my voice firm. A very good lawyer. I looked back at the deed, a plan beginning to form in my mind. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't beg. I would fight. Silently. Strategically. And I would win. I would get my house back. And then they would see what I was truly capable of. They would learn that some wounds, though silent, run deeper than any scream. They had taken everything from me. They had tried to erase me. But I wouldn't be erased. I would rise. And when I did, they would regret the day they ever crossed me. The rain outside intensified, the wind howling like a mournful cry. But inside, a different kind of storm was gathering strength, a storm of quiet fury, a storm of revenge. The aroma of chicken and vegetable soup filled Lunel's kitchen as I carefully placed the thermos on the counter. There you go, dear, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Thought you might appreciate a homemade lunch. Lunel barely glanced up from her phone. Thanks, she muttered, not even making eye contact. I lingered for a moment, a knot tightening in my stomach. Something felt profoundly wrong. The air in the house was thick with a tension I couldn't quite place. As I turned to leave, I heard Julian's voice, low and urgent. Are you sure about this, Lunel? He asked. I paused, my hand on the doorknob, pretending to fumble with my purse. Of course I'm sure, Lunel snapped. She's practically squatting here. We need the space, especially with the baby coming. And honestly, she's more of a burden than a help these days. My breath caught in my throat. A burden. After everything I'd done for them, after giving up my own life to help with the house, and Lunel's first pregnancy, the word stung. A sharp slap to my already bruised pride. Julian sighed. I still feel uneasy about this whole thing, he said. It's her house, Lunel. We can't just, he trailed off, his voice fading. It was her house, Lunel corrected him, her tone dripping with a chilling certainty. But now it's ours. Remember those papers Braden had her sign? The ones she didn't bother reading? Problem solved. My blood ran cold. Papers? What papers? Braden wouldn't, could he? I pressed my ear against the door, desperate to hear more. Braden handled it. Lunel continued, her voice smug. Said it was some kind of I don't know investment thing. She signed it without a second thought. But she'll find out eventually, Julian insisted. And when she does, she won't. Lunel interrupted, her voice sharp, because once the baby's born, we're going to tell her she needs to find somewhere else to live. We'll say we need the space, that it's best for the baby. She'll have no choice but to leave. My hand trembled as I gripped the doorknob, the metal cold against my skin. A wave of nausea washed over me. They were planning to evict me from my own house, the house I had worked my entire life for, the house I had foolishly, blindly, entrusted to my son. But where will she go? Julian asked, his voice laced with a concern Lunel clearly didn't share. She has nowhere else. Lunel shrugged, her indifference a knife twisting in my gut. That's not our problem, she said dismissively. She can figure it out. Maybe she can move in with one of those caregiver friends of hers. The casual cruelty of her words was almost unbearable. I stumbled back from the door, feeling dizzy and disoriented. Everything I had believed in, everything I had built, crumbled round me like dust. My own son, the child I had raised and loved unconditionally, had betrayed me in the most unimaginable way. I quietly slipped out of the house, the thermos of soup abandoned on the counter, a symbol of my misplaced trust. The crisp autumn air stung my cheeks, but I barely noticed. My mind was racing, a whirlwind of confusion, hurt, and a growing sense of icy resolve. I walked aimlessly, my steps heavy and slow. How could this have happened? How could I have been so blind? I thought of Braden, my sweet, gentle boy, and the man he had become, the man who had stolen my home. The image of Lunel's smug face flashed before my eyes, her casual cruelty echoing in my ears. She can figure it out. The words burned, fueling a fire within me that I hadn't known existed. I stopped walking, taking a deep breath of the cool air. The confusion and hurt began to recede, replaced by a steely determination. I wouldn't let them get away with this. I wouldn't let them steal my home, my security, my dignity. I would fight back. I would find a way to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The details were still hazy, but one thing was crystal clear. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The thought flickered like a small flame in the darkness, a promise of retribution, a whisper of hope. I would not be broken. I would rise. Rain lashed against the windows, mirroring the storm inside me. I unfolded the crisp document, the house deed, its familiar weight now crushing burden. My own house, the house I'd poured my life savings into, the house where I'd raised Braden, now legally belonged to him and Lunel, to Lunel, who'd thanked me publicly at her baby shower as her free living help. The memory stung, raw and fresh. I traced the forged signature, a cruel imitation of my own. How could my own son betray me like this? The rain intensified, blurring the streetlights outside into hazy halos. I closed my eyes, picturing every corner of this house, every memory etched into its walls. Braden's first wobbly steps in the living room, his graduation photo on the mantelpiece, the countless family dinners around the dining table all tainted now. I took a deep breath, a quiet resolve hardening within me. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about my dignity, my self-worth. I wouldn't let them steal that from me. I picked up my phone and dialed Romy's number. "Romy, I need your help," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Something terrible has happened." I poured out the whole story, the fraudulent deed, the humiliation, the gnawing sense of betrayal. Romy listened patiently, her voice soothing and reassuring. "Ola, you need a lawyer," she said firmly. "A good one. Someone who specializes in property disputes." Romy, bless her heart, knew exactly who I needed. She gave me the name and number of Ms. Anya Sharma, a lawyer known for her tenacity and unwavering dedication to her clients. The next morning, I called Ms. Sharma's office. Her voice, crisp and professional, filled me with a flicker of hope. "Ms. Ola, I understand you're in a difficult situation," she said after I'd briefly explained my predicament. "Come in and let's discuss this further." Her office was a calming oasis of order and efficiency, a stark contrast to the turmoil within me. "Ms. Sharma listened intently as I recounted the entire ordeal, laying out the deed, the baby shower incident, the growing suspicion I'd harbored about Braden, and Lunel's intentions. So, they essentially tricked you, she summarized, her gaze sharp and focused. They took advantage of your trust and your generosity. I nodded, the words a bitter confirmation of my deepest fears. We can fight this, Ms. Ola, she continued, her voice firm and reassuring. We have a strong case. This fraudulent transfer won't stand. She outlined a legal strategy, explaining the process of filing a lawsuit to reclaim ownership of my house. The legal jargon was complex, but Ms. Sharma patiently explained each step, answering my questions with clarity and confidence. We'll need to gather evidence, she explained. Bank statements, witnesses, anything that can corroborate your claim. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. I meticulously gathered every document, every email, every piece of evidence that could support my case. Romy was my rock, offering unwavering support, accompanying me to meetings with Ms. Sharma, and reminding me of my strength when I felt like giving up. You deserve justice, Ola, she'd say. Don't let them win. Her words fueled my resolve. I wouldn't back down. This wasn't just about a house. It was about reclaiming my life. I had worked hard for everything I had, and I wouldn't let anyone, not even my own son, take it away from me. The thought of Lunel, oblivious to the wheels I had set in motion, gave me a grim sense of satisfaction. She thought she had won. She thought she had outsmarted me. She had no idea what was coming. The crisp, sterile air of Dr. Enley's office did little to calm the storm brewing inside me. They think they can just take what's mine, I murmured, more to myself than to the lawyer sitting across from me. Dr. Enley, a woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind, simply nodded. Tell me again, Mrs. Ola, exactly what happened with the deed to your house, she asked, her voice calm and professional. I took a deep breath, the memory of Lunel's smug face at the baby shower flashing before my eyes. She thanked me for being her free servant. I choked out, the words still stinging months later. Then, just a week ago, I found out that the house had been transferred to Braden, and Lunel's names without my knowledge. Dr. Enley's expression remained unchanged, but I could see a flicker of something in her eyes, understanding, perhaps, or maybe even a touch of righteous anger. And you have documentation proving the house was originally solely in your name? She asked, reaching for a folder on her desk. I nodded, pushing a manila envelope across the table to her. Everything's in there. The original deed, the mortgage papers, everything. Dr. Enley opened the envelope and began meticulously examining its contents. The silence in the room stretched, punctuated only by the rustle of paper and the gentle hum of the air conditioning. I watched her, every muscle tense, every nerve ending on high alert. Finally, she looked up, a small smile playing on her lips. This is quite clear-cut, Mrs. Ola, she said, her voice firm. You are the sole owner of the property. This transfer appears to have been conducted fraudulently. A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it almost made me weak. So, what can we do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. We can file a lawsuit to reclaim ownership, Dr. Enley replied, her eyes locking with mine. It will take time, and it might get messy, but we have a strong case." She explained the process in detail, outlining the steps we'd need to take, the potential challenges we might face, and the likely outcome. I listened intently, absorbing every word, a sense of purpose solidifying within me. "I understand," I said, a newfound steel in my voice. "Let's do this, Doctor." Enley nodded, her smile widening slightly. "Excellent. I'll begin drafting the necessary legal documents immediately." She then proceeded to guide me through a series of forms, explaining each one carefully and patiently answering my questions. I signed where indicated, my hands surprisingly steady. With every stroke of the pen, I felt a growing sense of empowerment, a sense of reclaiming what was rightfully mine. The next few hours passed in a blur of paperwork and legal jargon. By the time I left Dr. Enley's office, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the city streets. I walked slowly, the weight of the day settling on my shoulders. But it wasn't the weight of despair or defeat. It was the weight of anticipation, the heavy yet strangely exhilarating feeling of knowing that I was finally taking action, finally fighting back. The first step had been taken. The wheels were in motion. I hadn't told Braden or Lunell about my meeting with Dr. Enley. I wanted it to be a surprise, a sudden and undeniable revelation of their wrongdoing. I imagined their faces when they received the legal notice, the shock and disbelief that would undoubtedly wash over them. The thought brought a flicker of a smile to my lips. It wouldn't bring back the years of quiet servitude, the subtle digs and veiled insults, the crushing humiliation of that baby shower, but it would be a start. I hailed a cab and gave the driver my address. As I watched the city lights blur past the window, I started thinking about the future. What would I do once I had my house back? Would I sell it and start anew somewhere else, far away from the memories and the pain? Or would I stay, a quiet testament to their defeat? I didn't know the answer yet. All I knew was that I was finally taking control of my life, finally reclaiming my narrative. And that in itself was a victory. The cab pulled up outside my apartment building, the familiar sight oddly comforting. I paid the driver and stepped out onto the sidewalk. The cool evening air a welcome contrast to the stuffy confines of the cab. As I climbed the stairs to my apartment, I couldn't shake the image of Lunell's triumphant smile at the baby shower. But this time, the image didn't fill me with despair. It filled me with resolve, because I knew deep down that that smile wouldn't last. The fluorescent lights of the county tax assessor's office buzzed overhead, a stark contrast to the quiet determination simmering within me. I wasn't sure I could do this, face the bureaucratic maze after everything that had happened. But the memory of Lunell's smug face at the baby shower, thanking me publicly for my free housekeeping services, fueled my resolve. I took a deep breath and approached the information desk. "I need to look up some property records," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. The clerk, a young man barely out of his teens, pointed me towards a row of computers. "Public access is over there, ma'am." I sat down and typed in my address, my fingers hovering over the enter key. It felt strange, almost surreal, to be investigating my own home, the place where I'd raised Braden, as if it belonged to someone else. The screen flickered, then displayed the property information. My heart sank. The owner listed wasn't me. It was Braden and Lunel. Seeing it in black and white, official and undeniable, was like a punch to the gut. There has to be a mistake, I muttered under my breath. I printed the document, the crisp paper feeling heavy in my hand. I left the office, the midday sun momentarily blinding. My head was swirling. I needed to talk to someone who understood the complexities of property law, someone I could trust. Romy. My old friend Romy had always been the practical one, a voice of reason amidst any chaos. I pulled out my phone and dialed her number. Romy, it's Ola. I need your help, I said, my voice trembling slightly. Something terrible has happened. We met at a quiet cafe a few hours later. Romy, ever the pragmatist, arrived with a notepad and pen in hand. Tell me everything, she said, her eyes full of concern. I recounted the events of the past few weeks, from the baby shower humiliation to my discovery at the tax office. He signed my house over to them. I finished, my voice thick with disbelief. My own son. Romy listened intently, her brow furrowed in concentration. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Ola, I'm so sorry. This is a terrible situation, she said. But don't despair. There might be something we can do. What? I asked, clinging to her words like a lifeline. What can I possibly do? Romy explained that she had a friend, Daniel, who specialized in real estate law. He's sharp, and he knows how to navigate these kinds of situations, she assured me. Let me give you his number. Give him a call, explain the situation, and see what he says. Hope, a fragile flicker, began to ignite within me. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe there was still a way to fight back. I clutched Daniel's number, a small piece of paper holding the potential to change everything. The following day, I sat in Daniel's office, a modern, minimalist space that felt a world away from the stuffy tax office. Daniel was a man of few words, but his eyes were sharp and intelligent. He listened patiently as I laid out my case, occasionally interjecting with a pointed question. Do you have any documentation related to the original purchase of the house? He asked. Mortgage agreements, deeds, anything like that? I nodded. Yes, I have everything filed away at home. Decades of paperwork. I told him how I'd paid the mortgage religiously, how I'd maintained the property, how it was rightfully mine. And you had no knowledge of this transfer of ownership until today, he clarified. None whatsoever, I replied, the sting of betrayal still raw. Braden never mentioned anything, not a word. Daniel tapped his pen against his notepad, his expression thoughtful. This is definitely complex, he admitted, but not insurmountable. The fact that you have maintained possession of the property is a significant factor, and the lack of your signature on any transfer documents raises some serious red flags. This smells of coercion or undue influence, potentially even fraud. He outlined a plan of action, explaining the legal steps we could take to challenge the fraudulent transfer. It was a long shot, he warned, but worth pursuing. He reassured me, we'll build a solid case, Ola. We'll fight for what's rightfully yours. His words, calm and confident, filled me with a sense of renewed purpose. For the first time since the baby shower, I felt a glimmer of hope. I wasn't powerless. I had a plan, and I would not be silenced. The humiliation I'd endured would not be my final chapter. There was a fight ahead, a fight for my home, for my dignity. And I was ready. The afternoon sun streamed through the living room window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I threaded my needle, a small, almost meditative act. Almost finished, I murmured to myself, the soft whisper a stark contrast to the echoes of Lunel's voice still ringing in my ears. Our free living help. Everyone. Thanks, Ola. The humiliation of that baby shower, of being paraded as their unpaid servant, still stung, but the sting was fading, replaced by a quiet resolve. My lawyer, Ms. Ramirez, had called earlier. The court date is set, she'd said. Be prepared. This could get messy. I'd replied, more calmly than I'd felt. I am prepared. I smoothed the fabric on my lap, the rich silk cool against my fingertips. It was a vibrant shade of emerald, a color Lunel had always coveted. Remember that dress you wore to Julian's graduation? Romy had asked when I showed her the fabric. The one Lunel kept eyeing. I had smiled, a genuine smile that hadn't graced my face in months. I do, I said. This is almost the exact same shade. This wasn't about the dress. Not really. It was about reclaiming something, anything, that had been taken from me. The rhythmic click of the sewing machine filled the quiet house. This house, my house, the deed with Braden and Lunel's names on it sat locked in my safe, a constant reminder of their betrayal. Mom, it's just a formality, Braden had said, his voice placating. It's to protect you, really. Protection. What a cruel joke. They'd protected me right out of ownership of my own home. But Ms. Ramirez had assured me, you have a strong case, Ola, she said. We'll get this sorted out. The dress was nearly finished. It was simple, elegant, a classic design that would never go out of style, just like the justice I was seeking. No flashy pronouncements, no dramatic confrontations, just the quiet satisfaction of righting a wrong. The phone rang, startling me. It was Ms. Ramirez. Ola, she said, her voice brisk and professional. I have some news. The judge ruled in your favor. The house is legally yours again. I closed my eyes, a wave of relief washing over me. Thank you, I whispered, the words inadequate to express the gratitude I felt. Thank you so much. I hung up the phone and looked around the living room, the setting sun painting the walls in warm hues. This house, my house, it was finally, truly, mine again. I ran my hand over the smooth silk of the dress, a small smile playing on my lips. Lunel's second baby shower was just a week away. It wouldn't be held here, of course. They'd planned a lavish affair at a country club, a far cry from the intimate gathering I had hosted for her first child. It needs to be special, Mom, Lunel had said, her tone implying that anything I could offer wouldn't be special enough. After all, this is Julian's heir. The irony wasn't lost on me. She wanted to celebrate her heir while simultaneously stripping me of my legacy. But now the tables had turned. I wouldn't be serving them canapes this time. I wouldn't be cleaning up their mess. I wouldn't be their free living help. I picked up the phone and dialed Romy's number. Romy, I said, my voice steady. I have something to tell you, and I have a favor to ask. The wheels were in motion. My revenge, quiet and carefully planned, was about to unfold. The emerald green dress, hanging in my closet, shimmered in the twilight. It was a symbol of more than just a reclaimed piece of fabric. It was a symbol of my reclaimed life. The quiet satisfaction I felt was just a prelude to the storm that was brewing, and I, for the first time in a long time, felt a sense of peace. I knew with absolute certainty that Lunel's second baby shower wouldn't be as special as she had planned. Christmas Eve. I sipped my tea, the warm mug a comfort against the chill in the air. My phone buzzed with a notification. Lunel had posted new photos. Nursery finally ready for baby two. The caption chirped. My heart clenched. I scrolled through the images, each one a carefully curated snapshot of a pristine nursery. Pale yellow walls, a whimsical mobile, a handcrafted rocking horse. It was beautiful, undeniably, but it was also empty, empty of the love and labor I had poured into the first nursery, the one I'd painstakingly decorated with hand-wear-upon blankets and a lovingly restored antique crib. Remember that rocking horse I refinished for Eleanor, I murmured to Romy, who sat across from me, wrapping presents. She glanced at my phone, her brow furrowing. The one your grandfather made. I nodded, remembering the hours I'd spent sanding and repainting it, humming a lullaby as I worked. It's not there, I said quietly. None of the things I made are. Romy's voice was indignant. She wouldn't just discard them, would she? I shrugged, a bitter taste rising in my throat. Apparently, another photo popped up, this one of Lunel beaming, cradling her pregnant belly. Julian stood beside her, his hand protectively placed on hers. They looked happy, a perfect picture of expectant parents. The caption read, "So grateful for all the support from family and friends as we prepare for this little one's arrival." Support, I echoed, the word catching in my throat. Romy reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Don't let it get to you, Ola. You know what you did. You know your worth." I met her gaze, a flicker of something resolve igniting within me. "I do," I said, my voice steadier now, "and I think it's time they remembered it too." I excused myself and went to my study, pulling out the thick file of legal documents. I ran my fingers over the embossed lettering, the deed to my house, now safely back in my possession. It felt solid, real, a tangible representation of the quiet victory I had won. Lunel's social media posts, her carefully constructed narrative of familial bliss, felt hollow in comparison. Returning to the living room, I forced a smile. "More tea, Romy?" I asked, already filling the kettle. "So," Romy said, changing the subject, "any plans for New Year's?" I paused, a thought taking shape. "Actually," I began, a mischievous glint in my eye, "I was thinking of having a small gathering, just a few close friends." The following days were a blur of activity. I deep cleaned the house, polishing the antique furniture and hanging fresh garlands. I ordered catering, hired a string quartet, and sent out handwritten invitations. I even found the old family photo albums, the ones filled with pictures of Braden as a child, his gap-toothed grin and mischievous eyes. I placed them strategically around the living room, reminders of a time before Lunel, before the bitterness and betrayal. New Year's Eve arrived, crisp and clear. The house buzzed with laughter and music. Friends I hadn't seen in years embraced me, their warmth a welcome balm. I felt a sense of peace, a quiet satisfaction that had eluded me for so long. As the evening wore on, I noticed a message notification on my phone. It was from Lunel. Saw your photos. Looks like a nice party. Wish we could have been there, but Julian's parents are having a New Year's Eve bash. Hope you're having fun. I smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of my lips. Fun, I typed back, my fingers hovering over the send button. Oh, we are. In fact, we're celebrating in the house that I own. Happy New Year, Lunel. I pressed send, then placed my phone face down on the table, the gentle hum of conversation filling the silence. Later, as the guests began to leave, Romy pulled me aside. You know, she said, her eyes sparkling. I saw Lunel's reply. Something tells me their New Year's wasn't quite as joyous as ours. I simply smiled, the warmth of the fire reflecting in my eyes. The house was quiet again, the echoes of laughter fading into the night. I stood by the window, looking out at the snow-covered garden, a deep sense of contentment settling over me. The rocking horse I had lovingly restored stood in the corner of the living room, a silent testament to the enduring power of family, of love, and of reclaiming what is rightfully yours. The new nursery, devoid of my touch, devoid of the history we shared, suddenly seemed insignificant, a pale imitation of the real thing. I had my home back, and that, I realized, was all that truly mattered. Christmas Eve. I parked across the street from Lunel and Braddon's house, the house that was almost stolen from me. I took a deep breath, smoothing down the simple dress I'd chosen. In the passenger seat sat a freshly baked loaf of sourdough and a basket of fluffy white towels. A small, almost insignificant peace offering, yet laden with a meaning only I truly understood. Just a normal visit, I murmured to myself, a practiced reassurance. I grabbed the basket and walked across the frost-kissed lawn, the crunch of my footsteps, the only sound breaking the quiet of the evening. As I approached the front door, I saw a flicker of movement in the living room window. Lunel's silhouette was visible, pacing back and forth, phone pressed to her ear. I rang the doorbell. Lunel opened the door, a strained smile plastered on her face. "Oh, hi, Ola," she said, her voice tight. "What brings you by?" "Just wanted to drop off some fresh bread and towels," I replied, holding out the basket. "Thought you might need them with the festivities." I let my words trail off and spoke in reference to her rapidly approaching second baby shower hanging in the air. Lunel's smile faltered. "Oh, thanks," she mumbled, taking the basket. "Braddon's out picking up some last-minute things." "Come in." The house felt different, emptier, somehow. The festive decorations that had adorned every surface during their first baby shower, the one where Lunel had publicly thanked me for my free servant services, were noticeably absent. The air, once thick with the aroma of catered food and the excited chatter of guests, now held a strange stillness. "Where's Julian?" I asked, stepping inside. Lunel shrugged. "He had a last-minute work thing. Said he might be able to swing by later." "That's a shame," I replied, my voice neutral. We made small talk, the conversation stilted and awkward. Lunel kept glancing at her phone, her fingers tapping nervously on the screen. I could practically feel the tension radiating off her. "Everything all right?" I asked finally, Unable to maintain the pretense any longer, Lunel sighed. It's just things haven't been going as planned, she admitted. The caterer canceled last minute, and half the guests called to say they can't make it. She wrung her hands. I don't know what to do. I looked around the sparsely decorated living room, the untouched buffet table, the deflated balloons clinging forlornly to the walls. It was a far cry from the extravagant celebration she had hosted for her first baby shower, the one where she had so carelessly dismissed my contributions. Well, I said, rising to my feet, I should be going. I have some errands to run. Lunel looked up, a flicker of something, perhaps panic, in her eyes. Are you sure? She asked. You could stay, help me set things up. The words were hesitant, almost pleading. I smiled, a small, genuine smile this time. I'm afraid I can't. I replied softly. I have other obligations. I picked up my purse. But I do wish you a successful shower. I walked towards the door, leaving Lunel standing there, amidst the remnants of her unraveling plans. As I stepped out into the crisp evening air, I couldn't help but feel a sense of quiet satisfaction. This house, the one she had tried to steal from me, the one where she had so publicly humiliated me, was once again mine. The legal documents, meticulously prepared and filed, had ensured that. And while Lunel might never know the full extent of my actions, the quiet dismantling of her carefully constructed plans was a victory I would savor. The memory of her forced smile, the tension in her voice, the palpable disappointment hanging in the air, these were the gifts I carried with me, more precious than any material possession. I glanced back at the house, the windows now dark and silent. The second baby shower, so meticulously planned, had crumbled, and I, the free servant, was finally free. I started the car, the engine purring to life, and drove away, leaving the quiet street and the quiet house behind. The Christmas lights twinkled in the distance, their cheerful glow a stark contrast to the shadows that lingered in Lunel's home. And as I drove, I thought of the new year, the new beginnings it promised, and the quiet strength I had found within myself. The house was mine again, and that, more than anything, was the greatest gift of all.